Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayemi Meseches KEREISOS Daf Chaf Zayin. We are holding 5 lines from the top of the Yomid. We begin with a question. Boy Rab Menashe Bar Gada. Bekinus Chomshin Maushi is Chaper. So this fellow has many fifths. See, as we learned yesterday, when a person takes money which was designated for Hegdish, suppose he had 2 selah put aside for purchase of a carbon asham, which needs to be worth 2 selah, and he goes and then uses that money for personal interests. So he has to pay back the money plus a fifth. Suppose he does this repeatedly, over and over again. Takes the 2 selah, uses it, pays it back plus a fifth, does it all over again, and ultimately all the chaimshin, all the fifths have now accumulated, and they total the full value of an asham, 2 selah. Can he take those fifths, which really were generated by way of the asham money, the repayment of the asham money? So in a way you can say it's meant for asham as well. Can he use those monies? You see, but he didn't really, it's not really his initiation, it's penalty money, payment for Hegdish misuse. That's the question here. Can I use that money to buy the asham? Rashi says, and the original money will be considered Maisar asham, leftover, which is used for its own purposes. It's used to buy public oilos. Does that work? With these accumulated fifths, Ma'oshis kapar, can use it for kapara, to purchase a korban asham. Miyamrin, shall we say? Really, this links into a different question, which will be the topic of the upcoming sugya called Shavach Hegdish. Any additional gain, value that developed with an Hegdish item. One example is a carbon had an offspring of Lot. Can I use that for kapara? It's coming out of my carbon. Likewise, if the carbon rose in value, can I tap into that? And in similar fashion, these chaimshin were sort of developed through the by the Hegdish money. Right, the fifth was added to the principal, so it's considered like a Shavach Hegdish, some added gain and value that developed through the Hegdish. Can I use that for kapara? Shall we say like this? Even if you would suppose that in the general sense, Adam mischaper b'shvach Hegdish, a person, yes, can utilize the added value, the gain, the shvach, the development of Hegdish for his own kapara, mishum talmud-gemara, because he put an effort. He was also a player, a cause for that extra gain. For instance, in the case where the value of your Hegdish animal rose, you were raising it, you're looking after it, so you also contributed to that added value. So you have a right to go use that added value as part of your kapara, because it's part and parcel of your investment. But here, no, there's no investment and effort and anything. It's just money that came about through his multiple penalties. And therefore, perhaps you cannot use it for kapara. Or then what you can say, on the other hand, even if you suppose that in general a person cannot gain kapara through the shavach of Hegdish, after all, he didn't offer that, he didn't designate it. The animal rose in value, or the animal had a baby. But these collection of fifths, where did they come from? From his pocket, the afreshe. So perhaps that's a positive factor in his favor. Perhaps in this case all would agree. He can use these monies for kapara, because we have this general question: Mischaper b'shvach Hegdish? Can a person achieve kapara through the shvach of Hegdish or not? Tashmai comes a raya. Hamafar shnei shloim la'asham. Set aside $2 for the asham, which is the proper value for the asham. V'lokach ben shnei elam la'asham. Instead of buying one, he bought two. But it so happens that Haya Echad Mehen Yovesh Te Slime. Right, we had this in the Mishnah yesterday. One of them happened to have risen in value. It's now worth 2 slime. Perfect value for the Asham. You can use that for the Asham, and the second one is leftovers. The second one is sent out to pasture for a mum, v'machar and sold. Yiplu damav, the money goes l'nadav. Now, how exactly did he go from being worth 1 selah to worth 2? My love, let's assume there's oven ba'arba. He bought the aisle for 4, meaning for 4 zuzim, which is 1 selah, v'shavach, shavi t'manya, and it increased in value by 100%. And now it's worth 8 zuz, 2 selah. And he can tap into it, he can take advantage of that price increase and consider it a full value asham, despite the fact that he only paid 1 selah. We can conclude from here the Adam is kaper. A person can gain kapara b'shvach hegdish by the added value. Loi. No. Really, Hachamai Skin, we're talking the Oizel Roya Gabe. Really, it was worth 2 selah when he bought it. The Roya, the shepherd, the animal dealer, gave him a good deal. Gave him a discount. A good friend of his, he gave him a discount. But since, in actuality, in terms of market value, it was worth the full price of 2 selah, he's good. So we have no right from here regarding shvach and increases and developments. We're talking that it was worth the proper amount to begin with. Tashmai comes another right from a price, which has 2 parts. First part is lokach ayil b'sala. He purchased the ayil, the ram for the yasham, with only just 1 cell, which isn't really enough. It needs to be worth 2. Upitmai. He force-fed it, he stuffed it, he raised it, the animal, until it was worth double. Because of his efforts, it was worth 2 now. Kosher, you can use it for the carbon. Okay, so can't you learn from here, Shema Mino, that really a person can use Shvach of Hegdish for his own kapar, Adam is kapar Shvach Hegdish. Because this increase in value happened once it was already labeled as Hegdish, and he can tap into it and use it. Loi, says the Gemara here, it's very different because who brought it about? Pitmai, Shani. The fact that he was mafatim, that's totally different. The chosli tamhanya, because ultimately he paid out 8 for zuz to buy and another 4 zuz to get it up to 2 selah. So it was his expense, it was his cost, his investment. There's no shavach hegdish. Toshmai comes another right from the second part of that price. Lokach ayil b'selah. So again, he bought the ayil with 1 selah. V'arayu b'shtayim, turns around, it's worth 2. Kosher. It's fully okay. Apparently. Adam mischaper b'shvach hegdish. Hochanamik shapitma. Here too, we're talking that he fed it, he raised it to the point that it achieved this added value. So it's his doing. And that's why you can use Yachan Reisha. Well, if that's the case, then you're just repeating the first case of the Brisa, which talks about the same. Well, there's a slight difference. Yeah, in both cases, he bought it for cheap, then he developed it, but Reisha, in the first case of the Brisa, the Zavan Ba'arba, he purchased it for 4 zuz, which is 1 selah, and he invested another 4 zuz, Ba'arba Achrina, to bring it up to 2 selah, the Chasal Eitamanya, in which case it cost him 8. So he fully spent the 8 zuz. Of course, he's entitled to use the carbon as his. But Seifa, in the next case, it's a slightly different situation. It rose, but not to the same extent. The Zavan Ayil Ba'arba, he bought it for 4 zuz, which is 1 selah. He only invested 3 to bring it up. V'shavi Timanya. And his investment paid off really nicely. He invested 3 zuz, but it shot up 4. Now it's worth a total of 8 zuz, full 2 selah. Says the Mori Yochim, if that's the case, let's proceed with the Brisa. Yishalom Selah. He's got to lay out another Selah. What does that mean? A Chassalei Zayin, you already spent 7 zuz, which is almost 2 Selah. Why does he have to? It says, why Yishalom? Tashlim the Selah. He doesn't have to lay out another Selah. He has to fill in the missing zuz to get it up to the full Selah that was missing before. Well, says the Gemara, Yisraelei. But it's still not going to work, because if you hold the Ein Adam Mischaper Shach Hegdish, and generally a person cannot take advantage of the Shvach Hegdish for his own Hakrava, his own Kapara, Ki Yoiv Tashlim the Selam Ayhavi. Even if he goes and he pays up the difference to bring it up to, But that doesn't change the value of the actual ayil. Ayil ben shtei slayim ba'in and v'lek. We need the ayil to be worth 2. And it wasn't worth 2. When he bought it, right, the increase happened after it was designated as hegdish. So the fact that he's laying out money on the side, what does it have to do with the value of the ayil at the time of purchase? Says the Gemara, you're right. Truthfully, we can prove from here that in fact a person can be mischaper b'shvach hekdesh. And since it's not worth 2, he can use it. And so why is he paying anything? The missing, amount of the sell. The reason why the kayav tashlum in the sell, the reason why he has to top up the seller, top it off to get the full value, it's midrabanan. Because of optics, we want people to realize that your ayil has to be worth 2 seller. So in this case, that he only bought it for 1 seller. He invested 3 more zuz, which is 3/4 of a seller, and it jumped up, and it's worth another full seller for a total of 2. Technically, he's good to go. The reason why we obligate him to top it off and throw in an extra zuz, the missing zuz, is zero concern, so that people don't misconstrue what happened. We don't want people to say ayil pachos mishtei slayim machaper, that one can use an ayil worth less than 2 seller. So technically, even though in this case it is worth 2 seller, that's really fine. But people might misunderstand. They'll say, well, look, he spent only 1 seller and he'll invest. They won't realize what happened. And they'll mistakenly conclude you don't have to buy an ayil with 2 seller. It doesn't have to be worth full 2 seller. So in order to make people mindful, to clarify this point, he has to throw in an extra zuz, the missing zuz, to top it up, to get it up to the... So he actually laid out a full 2 seller. 1 seller when he bought it, 3 zuz investment in the pitum, and now the final zuz. This way, it clarifies to all, confirms that in fact the seller has to be worth 2. The ayil has to be worth 2 seller. Okay, my havela. What's the conclusion? We had some back and forth on this question. What's the bottom line? Adam mischaper b'shvach hekdesh or not? So from the previous brisa, the way we can conclude it, it would seem the answer is yes. But here comes a definitive halacha, tashma. Brisa says, b'sh'as hafrasha yav seller. If at the time of purchase or setting aside the ayil, it was worth just 1, and then b'sh'as kapara, at the time of kapara, at the time of hakrava, it's worth double. Yav shtei slayim, great, yatsa. So that clarifies it. You can use the shvach of hegdish for your kapara. Chazon Ish explains because it's really included in the initial hegdish. You had this obligation and you committed this animal for the fulfillment of the obligation, and whatever that animal generates and produces and increase, it's all part of that initial designation. To use it to address, to satisfy your chiv. Boy Rabbi Elazar. Now comes Rabbi Elazar with the same question. Adam is chaper b'shvach hekdesh aloi. Rabbi Yochanan. He doesn't know the answer. Look how much time he spent with us. He never heard us talk about it. Rabbi Yochanan, kama shonim golos beninu. He spent so many years amongst us. Never heard this halacha many from me. Mechlal dam Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara is assuming, yes, Rabbi Yochanan actually said it, and yep, he did. He said it on the following halacha. On a different variation of a shvach, on the offspring, the snan. We have a Mishnah back in Maseches Menachos. V'la toido t'murasa. So the toida gave birth, or the t'mura of the toida, or another example of a secondary toida. V'chein hamafresh toidasa v'avdo. He had a toida that went missing, and he came up with a backup. V'yifish acheres tachteha. Ein tunis lechem. So all these secondaries do not have to have bread coming along with them, as the primary toida does. So you makrav it as a toida but without bread, because bread is limited to the primary, to the original one. V'shalach Rabbi Chanina, he sent a message. Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan lo yishanu. When does the secondary not need bread? Ela lacha kapara. The blood. Ein ton lach. So after the kapara had been achieved by the mother animal, the primary, so then the vlad is sort of secondary. No need for lechem. Alafnei kapara, but if you still before the kapara, meaning, suppose you chose the vlad as your toida, now the mother's left behind. Ton lechem, of course the vlad needs lechem. That's your ikar korban. So knowing that, we can conclude alma kasavar. Apparently, Rabbi Yochanan holds the fact that he allows us to use the vlad as considered your actual fulfillment of the toida obligation. Alma kasavar meschaper b'shachedish. By Rabbi Elazar comes another question. Rabbi Elazar asked, "Balachayim nedachen oiloi." What if there was a live animal designated for a korban and something went awry? One example Rashi brings: you have the two goats, the pair of goats in Yom Kippur. One meant for Chatas, one for Azazel. One of them died, and you have to go pair him up with another one. What's the status of this survivor? Shall we say, use him? Go ahead, find a pair and a counterpart, use him. Or you can say, once he was unfit at a certain point in time, and when his colleague died, he becomes stamped as rejected for all time. So matters that are not Bali Chaim, carbon materials, we say nidachin. Once it becomes off, it's off. But perhaps a live animal can always, refresh and regenerate. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he doesn't know the answer. It's a very similar expression to the previous Gemara. That's probably how it, one thing leads to the next. It's sort of all. You have another one coming up soon as well. So he says, look, he spent so many years with us. Never heard salacha from me. Says the Gemara, Amra. So, do you mean Rabbi Yochanan spoke about it? Yes, he did. Rabbi Yochanan, a classic case. We have one animal owned by Reuben and Shimon. Reuben decided to be generous because Magdash is his part, his half. Yeah, but that's not enough because you can't be makar by half an animal. So it's not really going to achieve a very high level of kedusha. It's only going to become monetarily committed, monetarily kaddish. But there's no kedusha haguf. There's no inherent kedusha on the animal because part of it belongs to his partner. So he did this sort of, pending kedusha on his half, and then he went out and bought out his partner, and then he was magdash the rest. V'chazar, he turned around, he got the rest. V'gdisha is magdash the rest. What's the status of this behemoth? Is it an okay korban? No. Kedusha, it has kedusha, ve'ena kriva. You can't put it on the mizbeach. Because since when he initiated the kedusha on his half, it was unfit for that purpose, it becomes nidcha. It becomes rejected permanently, despite the fact that he came around and he completed the hegdish when he bought out his partner. Too late. Kedusha, ve'ena kriva. I said, Shmuel can make a tmura. It has that power. Tmura has the same status, meaning it is unfit. Shmamana tlas. We can conclude three things from this halacha. Shmamana balchaim nidachen. That's the answer to our question. The concept of rejection applies even to a balchai, such as in this case. Ushmamana k'dushas dam matche. Shmamana yishdich b'dam. Likewise, that the idea of dicha, rejection, applies even to something which never rose to the level of k'dushas haguf ever. So you think perhaps only something which already had a high level of kedusha and then falls off the track, I can't come back on. But something which only had kedusha's stomach to begin with, it never really got too far. Perhaps dicha doesn't apply. It does. So Rashi actually has a different gerus. He says these two things here are really one and the same. Kedusha's stomach matche and yish dicha b'dam. So he adds another one. Dicha mi'ikar v'dicha. Shema mino dicha mi'ikar v'dicha. We learn from here that even something which was unfit from the start, it wasn't like on the track and fell off the track. It was a non-starter, right? The initial attempt was unsuccessful, still dichui would apply to it. Bottom line, we see from here Rabbi Yechanan's position is that dichui would apply to Baal Chai. Third question by Rabbi Lazar. By Rabbi Lazar, who's lutlaim ba'olam ma'u? So as we're learning, there is a minimum value requirement for the asham, which is 2 sela. Let's say you can't find it for 2 sela. The market's swamped. It's dropped to a sela. You can't find. Mo, what happens now? Miyamrina shall we say it's still okay as long as it's a good quality piece. After all, that's the objective. Miyamrina mivchan adreichem. Pasuk says, bring the best. But that's what you need to do. Vayika, fact is, its quality parallels your 2 sela asham, just happens to be the market price drop, but the values are still the same. In terms of quality, or you can say no. But it has to be worth 2 sela. It's an absolute precondition. And you don't have it. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, once again, Rabbi Yechanan responds, Kama Shonim go down Mesa Medrash. Look, we spent so many years in Mesa Medrash, we never heard about this halacha. It's a unique halacha. Good question. Really, V'loi? It was never discussed. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, he himself quotes Amar Shimon Yochai to the extent that it's an issue. It's unfit. In fact, he had a question. Why is it that we don't find the Torah setting a minimum value requirement when it comes to b'mechutza kapara, karbanos that are meant to allow a mitzayir, a nazir to go re-enter the Beis Hamikdash and eat karbanos? Why is there no value there? You bring whatever it is. Shema Yuzl Tloim, the concern is this very phenomena. Perhaps the price of the tloim, of the lambs, of the animals will drop, and if they're not worth how much they need to be worth, then this fellow is going to be stuck in limbo. You can never go eat kachim until the market rises. So the Torah gave him, out of concern for these people, the Torah did not peg an absolute, minimum value for their karbanos. But regarding other types of karbanos like kapara, Farshim explained, look, even if you can't bring the kapara, but the ratzon, the will to bring it, the interest in bringing it, that can do a kapara, where you learn the psukim, you learn the halachis, right? Kesser Yeshua explained. He says, there are other ways to achieve, whatever kapara you can achieve even without a carbon. But a mechutza kapara, he's stuck. He's in limbo. There's an absolute system he has to follow. He has to bring a carbon if there's a minimum value. That's risky. So the Torah, out of compassion for the mechutza kaparas, reaccessing the Beis Hamikdash and eating karbanos, did not pen a minimum value. Shema Yuzal Tloim, Ve'elam Takana Echel B'Kotshim, right? For concern that the price will drop, which will make it something undoable for them. So bottom line, what do we learn from here? That Rabbi Yechon himself taught this halacha, quoted Rabbi Shimon Yochai, that if the price drops below the threshold, it's unfit. So why did he say, well, we never discussed this? He was just saying that we never taught it. It was never discussed. I never taught it. What do you mean? Reb Zera bar Ada, we know that Reb Zera bar Ada, Mahada Talmudei, he would review everything they learned from Rabbi Yechanan once in 30 days in front of Rabbi Yechanan. So clearly, he was a dedicated student that learned everything that Rabbi Yechanan had to say, including this halacha. Ema rather, learned his baksha halachas u'menu beis hamedrash. Rabbi Yechanan was expressing that it's been many years. Look, we've been learning for many years, and this never was brought up. It was never asked. We were never approached with this halacha, with this question. And apparently that he was, he was surprised. He was excited. Oh, finally we can teach it and clarify it for the masses. Gufa, let's go back to this halacha. Why is it so that the Torah does not establish a minimum threshold value for the korban by mechusar kapara? Shema yuzot line, for concern that the price of the animals will drop worldwide and will drop below the required minimum, leaving them hanging. Ask the Gemara. So if the concern is strictly for the mechusar kapara, okay, so then when it comes to a chatas, why don't we find the Torah establishing a minimum value there? That's not for mechusar kapara, it's for regular kapara. So just like by the Asham, there's a minimum to sell a requirement. So why not by the chatas? If that's the concern, if that's the factor, so chatas chelev, which does not have that factor, a chatas that one brings for eating chelev, he knows no kitzbah. There should be a kitzbah, minimum value applied to it. It's coming to atone. We're not coming to permit kachim. So there's no concern of leaving him hanging without access to kachim. Mask of Larava. Another question, if that's the concern, so that's the only factor for avoiding the establishment of a minimum value. Asham Nazar, Lavale Kitzpah. Likewise, by Asham Nazar, there should be a minimum value requirement. The Vatalahu, the Asi, Vatala means it's not coming for kapara, and it's not even coming for giving him access to kachim. It's just part of the purification process, part of the. There's no other korban that's considered levatala, meaning without these types of designations. Except for the Asham Nazir. So if it's not coming for kapara, and it's not coming for to be matarim for karbanos, so then why not give it a minimum value requirement? It's interesting. It's called levatala. It just means to say that it's not addressing like a standard, a typical chiyuv. It's not for kapara. It's not to be matar b'kachim. So we leave these questions unanswered. Bottom line, we had 3 discussions now. Gemara, which turned out to be halachas that Rabbi Yochanan had actually learned and taught, and all 3 were asked by Rabbi Lazar. Unbeknown to him that Rabbi Yochanan had taught it. First thing was whether a person could be mischaper b'shvach hegdish. The answer turned out to be yes. Balachayim medachim, yes. And when there is a minimum value requirement for the korban, like the 2 slime of the asham, well, if it drops down below that point worldwide, you're stuck. You have to wait until the price rises to the point that you can use it for the asham. Very interesting halacha. Okay, we turn to Talmud Bavli. Says the Mishnah, Mafresh chatas yomes. Reuben had a chatas to address a sin. He passed away. Can his son is a Yerush, his son takes over for his father, can he go ahead and use that same korban that his father had earmarked for his own sin, for the son's own use? The son cannot use that chatas for his own purposes. As we're going to see in the Gemara, Pasuk says, Korbanov, it has to be for the person who had initially earmarked it. Chatasoi, it has to be specific to the chatas that it was meant for. So there are 2 elements of specificity. The person, the intended person, and the intended sin. You can't shift it around. So here we have the son trying to bring the father's chatas. No, you can't. And likewise, you can't shift it. It was meant for chet A, you can't decide to bring it for chet B. Even if they're both the same type of sin, but yesterday's and today's. So he was mafresh for yesterday's chelev, Why you can't bring it for the chil that he ate today. The pasuk says karbanoi. It has to be his. Al chatasoi, on his sin. Karbanoi l'shem chatasoi. It meant to be his karban for this specific sin. But not only how do we know you can't shift things around? Pasuk says karbanoi. Rashi says that actually the word karbanoi is mentioned 3 times in the chatas discussion to teach us to address 3 different elements of relabeling and shifting. Karbanoi. We learned b'karbanoi hu yotzei. He can use his own karban, but not his father's. Ve'eno yotzei b'karbanoi yachal, perhaps. That's true in a limited sense. When he's trying to make a drastic shift. Perhaps the son cannot use his father's chatos if it's for a different designation. Let's say father had a chatas for something severe. Rashi says a chilul Shabbos, which is considered relatively more severe than chelev, because chilul Shabbos carries with it potential for capital punishment, Mrs. Bezin, which chelev doesn't. So if he wants to take his father's chatas, which was meant for a chamura, and use it on something which is kala, on a lighter sin, okay, that maybe doesn't work. Or vice versa, you can't shift things around from one type to the other. Aval, perhaps, but let's say if it's on the same plane, maybe that works. Aval yotze b'karban av shivrish av. You can use his father's karban on kala ala kala. If it's the light to the light, or from heavy to heavy. Once again, we have karbanoi specificity. B'karbanoi yotze. Ve'eno yotze b'karban shalav. We can only use his karban, not his father's. But furthermore, yachal, perhaps. That's only an issue if he's trying to reallocate a behemoth. What about money that his father had designated? Can he use that? He can't use his father's behemoth, shivrish, that he had already set aside. Even if it's a similar sin, because after all, the behemoth had been labeled and earmarked for that purpose. Even if it's just shifting from kala to kala, I understand because the behemoth has already sort of been labeled. Just like we find by a nazir that a son can't tap into his. Let's say the father was a nazir and put aside behemoths and died. The son can't become a nazir and use his father's behemoths. He can't do the shaving and the conclusion of Nazirus, process with the karbanis of his father. But perhaps if father had only designated some money for a chatas, maybe the son can pick it up. Why? Because we find an element of fluidity by money. Regarding a nazir, a son can tap into his father's nazir fund after his father's passing. Using the money. Shefresh Aviv. When they've been set aside without specific labeling, meaning for Russian as opposed to father already designated, said this is for my chatas, this is my oila, then it's an issue. But if it's stumim, unspecified, money on the side for the nazir fund, the son can pick it up. Perhaps the same regarding chatas money time. We have a third mentioning of karbanai. No, has his own name on it. But karbanai yotzei. We can only use his and not his father's. Okay, so we have 3 mentionings of karbanai to cover all 3 variations. We spoke about not using it for the animal for a different type of chet, then even for the same type of chet, and even regarding the father's money. Okay, now, let's say within the person himself, can he go ahead and take his own karban, which was meant for issue A, and apply it for issue B? So now we shift to the chatasoi element of specificity. It has to be specific to this chatas that it was meant for. So perhaps, okay, so father's money is off limits, even though he's attempting to use it for a similar idea. Because it's his father's. What about reallocating a karban that he himself had designated for his own purposes? He wants to reallocate it to something else. Afilu min hachamur ala kala, ibn hakala al chamur. Tamulei mekarbanai al chatasoi. Chatasoi tells you it's committed to that specific cause. You can't shift it over. Achihe l'shem chatasoi. Says the Gemara, okay, I understand I can't, reallocate the behemoth. What if it's just money? Money, you would think, allows for more fluidity. It can be converted and transformed, just like me'ilah affects money. There is money meant for hegdish, money meant for a carbon. A person misuses it, that money turns chulin. That's the essence of me'ilah. It vacates its kedusha. So you see that money is a more fluid type of entity. So perhaps lechatchila, I can go ahead and redesignate my chatas fund from chatas 1 to chatas 2, from this sin to that sin. Perhaps lo yetze b'karban atzma. You can't use your own carbon behemoth if it's a behemoth that had already been earmarked shefesh la'atzma, which he set aside for his own atonement, because it's committed for that cause, regardless of what you're trying to redirect it to. Afilu min hakala ala kala, oy min hachamura al chamura. I understand. Shekain because im hifresh behem al chaylev. V'yil adam. A person had set aside a behemoth for eating chaylev, and he mistakenly applied it for eating dam, or vice versa. Al adam v'yil chaylev. That doesn't affect the status of the carbon. Sharei lo yimav lo keeper. No me'ilah took place, meaning the behemoth does not lose its kedusha, not change its status because he redirected it mistakenly. It doesn't have an effect on the behemoth. The behemoth holds its ground, holds its kedusha intact. In fact, the intended, kapara, which you attempted to achieve, will be ineffective. Meaning, the behemoth retains its position, retains its original kedusha. So there I understand. Behemoth is more resistant to change. And therefore, likewise, you can't just redesignate it. But if it's just money, which has an element of fluidity, perhaps that could be converted. That could be redesignated. Money that he had set aside for purpose A, perhaps he can use it for purpose B. Why? We find a similar precedent when it comes to converting money, that it works. Because let's say you set aside money for the purchase of a chatos chelav. You mistakenly used it to buy chatos for dam, or vice versa. It does take effect. He has committed me'ilah, shari mal. So that money loses its initial kedusha, and the new purchase is effective. The new designation takes effect. In fact, it does achieve kapara for that new purpose. So what do we see from here? Money is most susceptible to change. So perhaps in our case, you can purposely redesignate money. Once again, we have the word karban, and we learn if it's committed to this sin, you cannot reallocate it. Now, what does the Brisa mean when it makes that correlation to me'ilah? What does that mean? He didn't do me'ilah, there's no kapar. Tirgum Rav Shmuel bar Simcha made our Rabbi explain in front of our public, the Brisa means like this. It's a correlation. It's a parallel. We're drawing from there. Hachikam, kivan d'lei motzi moil, kippur namel mechaper. By behema, which has certain status. You can't vacate that status. That's the halacha. Behema will never lose its kedusha via misuse, and therefore it still holds on, holds its ground, holds its designation. Kippur namel mechaper. So you can't use it for the new kapara. So again, if a person has a behema meant for chaylev and he by mistake attempts to be makrid for dam, there will be no me'ilah effect to the point that it will now be redesignated. No. Since me'ilah will not take effect, it will not inherently be changed or lose its former kedusha and not achieve the new kapara. I understand. So Likewise, if he has a behemoth before him, he can't just go ahead and redesignate. A behemoth is resistant to change. But if it's just money is generic. Since if you mistakenly misuse it for the other korban, he has committed milah. He has to bring a korban milah. So basically his milah is effective. It loses its kedusha and gets redesignated. So perhaps in our case, we can allow for redesignation if it's just money. You can use money meant for this chet and use it for something else. The point is, no. Chatosai tells you, once it's committed to address one chet, leave it there. Continues the Mishnah. Let's say it's just a slight redesignation. The money was meant to buy a kispa, a sheep. Can you use it for a goat? Yeah, they're close enough. It's not considered a deviation. Mehegdash seira, meant for a seira, kispa, you buy a kispa as well. Now we all know about korban oila v'yered. Certain sins trigger, instead of a fixed value type of chatas, a more flexible system, a 3-tiered system. Top level is an animal korban, if you can afford it. If you can't, it drops down to a bird, pair of birds. And below that we have the mincha. Suppose his fortunes changed. He had designated money for the behemoth, now he can't afford a behemoth. Now he wants to bring a bird, wants to bring a mincha. Or the opposite, maybe his fortunes rose. Initially, when he was mafresh the money, he thought it's going to be a mincha. Now he suddenly can bring a behemoth. You could just add to the fund. Even though it was meant for a mincha, just add and buy a bird, add and buy a behemoth. Or deduct. Deduct from your fund, take off and buy a bird, take off and buy a mincha, and the rest is yours to keep. And we learn that from Sukkot. You don't have to go and redo the system. You can modify, you can add, you could subtract from the fund, as per the current requirement. Money that was meant for an animal, if there's a need, you can take a portion of that for birds. Likewise, money meant for birds, if there's a need, you can take a portion of that for asira sa'efa, for the mincha. Ketzad. How does this play out? He had money for the animal. Hani. Now he became an ani, poor man, he can't afford. Yavi oif. He takes part of that money for a bird. Hani. He dropped even below that. Yavi asira sa'efa, used that money for the part of that for the mincha. And vice versa. If his fortunes rose, Hifrish la asira sa'efa, he set aside money for just a mincha, which was his level at that time. Hesher became wealthy. Yavi oif. He just adds that fund for a bird. Hesher, his fortune rose even more. Yavi kispa, he adds money and buys an animal with the full amount. How do we know? That you can just deduct from the fund, add to the fund, you don't have to redo it all over again. So, meaning despite the fact that this money had been earmarked, it's very similar to the previous sugya, it was earmarked for a bird, how can you reallocate it for an animal, etc.? How do we know? We have a brayso based on the psukim. By the korban oil v'yered, it says meichatasai, from his chet, telling us that you can take a portion of that initial money. Again, it says meichatasai, again, and then it says al chatasai. So you add. We learn from here. You don't have to set aside new money. If you're dropping to the lower level, just take part of the initial money, and the rest is yours. If you're rising to the higher level, you're upgrading, just add al chatas. Matam level. What's the message of these psukim? How do we know? Shemivin mehegdish kispa sira. Shemivin mehegdish kispa sira. Money meant for a kispa can be used for a sira. Umehegdish sira, money meant for a sira can be used for kispa. Interestingly, the Gemara is not really going to bring a pasuk with that. And the first one explained this seems to be obvious. It's not really a drastic, shift. That's okay. What about umehegdish kispa sira toim neyayna? Money meant for an animal. Can you use part of that for birds? What about even a drop below that? Umehegdish toim neyayna asir se'efa. He wants to use money meant for birds. Part of that for the asir se'efa. Ketzad. How would this play out? Hifresh l'kispos l'sira. He was holding at level 1. Money for behemoths, veheni. His fortunes dropped. Yav. Part of that goes for the bird, the rest he keeps. Hani. His fortunes dropped below that. Yav Sefer takes part of that for the mincha. And the rest is his to keep. And the same in the other direction, going up. Hifresh Sefer behesher, he meant he intended a mincha, and now he can afford more. He adds to that amount for a bird. Hesher, he went even higher. Kispos here, he adds to that for an animal. Hifresh kispos asira v'nistavu. Now, before we continue, let's just backtrack. There is actually a girsa at the very end of the Mishnah. We need to insert a halacha. So it goes like this: Hifresh kispos asira v'nistavu. Until now we spoke about money. Money meant for this, you can add, you can subtract. What if he actually has an animal? Kispos asira, which at that time was on his level, in his stomach, and then it got a mum. And now he's an ani. He really doesn't want to bring. He wants to bring a bird. He can do that. So he converts it into money and uses part of that for a bird. But the Mishnah concludes: Hifresh oif in his time. Let's say he had set aside a bird and it got a mum, and now he can only afford a mincha. Can he do the same? No. You can't use that money for the mincha. Shein loif pidyon is halacha that you can't do pidyon on a bird. Rashi explains in the Mishnah, "Pidyon lo nemar lo b'behema." We only find pidyon by behema. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the Mishnah. And likewise, the Brisa will conclude likewise. Hifresh kispos asira. He had an animal, v'nistavu got a mum imratza. If he wants to, yavi b'damei oif. If that's his level now, he can bring a bird with part of that money. Hifresh oif v'nistavu. But if he had a bird and got a mum, lo yavi b'damei asira. Say if he can't use the money for a mincha, she'ein loif pidyon. L'chein namar mechatasoi. And they add another mechatasoi al chatasoi. These psukim teach us this whole adding and subtracting system. Now the Gemara is going to ask, why do we need so many psukim for every step of the way? I mean, once we know that you can, the basic concept, can't we just apply it to all variations? No, each one has a chiddush. We need mechatosei twice. They can upgrade. Mechatosei means to deduct, the deduction system. You can deduct from the animal fund and from the bird fund. Right? You can go down from the animal to the bird and from the bird down to the mincha. Each one is unique in its own way. Why? The puzzle will only teach us this diminishing, the subtracting system when it comes to the animal fund. Having, I would say, an animal and a bird are pretty close. They're both living beings. So since they have that similarity, it allows for an easy, conversion. Easy shift. I would say, hifresh kispa, to set aside money for the kispa, when he becomes an ani, ma'alein mois, nachlin ra'alif. So from these monies, you can redirect it for the bird, the nice oif, to buy with a knife. Why? Because they're similar enough, the bird and the animal. The kispa, the oif, because the kispa and the oif, it's both types of blood, they're animals, they're living beings. So it allows for that shift. But to go down from a bird to a mincha, which is a totally different type of material, it's not if the pasuk would not have repeated this concept of mechatosai to allow for this downgrade from the bird to the mincha, I would say, you can't do that. If he set aside money for his birds and he dropped in his fortunes, if you can't use that money for a mincha because a different type of material, Ella, rather, he's stuck. He'll have to bring new money for the mincha from his home. And these monies, which he's not using, the offers that he had already set aside, that's being unused, that's what I would think. Perhaps it doesn't allow for an easy conversion. That's what the Torah repeats the word mechatosei by the bird to say yes. Remember to teach the mehagdish the oif nami maisi asir seif. You can go down from the bird to the sir seifa using the same way. All kinds of gersos here. Be'isruch lemichtav al chatasei gabei sir seifa. Now, what about al chatasei? There's a need for that. That you take the sir seifa and you add to teach us. Umay taima kosav al chatasei gabei sir seifa. What's the message of al chatasei by the mincha? V'chikam means like this. Okay, mafresh la sir seifa. If he had money for the mincha, vadamaisi, by the time he came around to bringing it, sure, he won the lottery. Noisev aleyayin. He would just add to it. V'naisi and go up to the bird. Sure, you can afford even more. Noisev aleyayin. Just add to that very same money. You don't need new money. Just add to that money. V'naisi kispasir and bring a behemoth. What's the point of saying this by the sir seifa? Why did the Torah say al chatasei specifically by sir seifa? Because if it would say by the oif, I would say, yeah, the switch over from the bird money to the behemoth money is an easy switch. So it allows for that conversion because they're both similar types. I would say ki mafresh. Right? So the question the Bach adds, why did it say it by the mincha, not by the bird? The answer is because if it would say this concept by the bird, I would say, yeah, if he had money for the birds and he became an asher that allows for adding to the upgrade to the animal. Because the bird and the animal are similar in nature. But if he had money for the mincha and then he bumped up, maybe he can't do that. Ilo yasher tuva, if he didn't become super wealthy, only a bit, nice yoif, he'll bring a bird, yes. From his own money, from new money. You can't use the mincha money for a bird, a different type of thing. If yasher tuva, if he got really wealthy, nice he's supposed to bring new money for an animal. But the old money for the mincha, the effort that he had put aside for the mincha, equal in dava, goes in the dava. Who says you can convert that mincha money into bird money or animal money? Shirus. Vidalis. Oh, that explains the whole configuration of the psukim. That's why the pasuk specifically mentioned the word mechatase. Where? By the ashirus, by the behemoth, to tell you that part of that can be used for a bird. Vidalis, and also use the word mechatase by dalis, which is level 2 by the birds, to tell you, well, if you have to drop, you can use that money and drop down to the mincha, and the rest of the money is yours. But the word al chatasei that was specifically mentioned v'gavi dalis by the super part, by the third level. Over there it says al chatasei. By the mincha, the midrash damrin to teach us as we had explained. Despite the fact that it's mincha money, you can use it to upgrade to a bird, despite the fact that they're similar, the mincha and the bird. Okay, so in conclusion, the pasuk by expressing mechatosai once and mechatosai again and al chatasai is teaching us that the covenant of yered money can be tweaked and modified as per need, whether it's going up, whether it's going down, whether it's going up from the mincha to the bird to the behemoth, or vice versa, going down from the behemoth to the bird down to the mincha. How do we see that? One mechatosai tells you can go down from the animal to the bird. Part of that money for the bird, the rest is your money. Likewise, you can use a portion of the bird money for a mincha, mechatos. What if his fortunes rose? He had money for a mincha, now he could afford more. Al chatas, just add to that. And buy a bird or a behemoth. All the best to you and hatzlacha.